I think partially just for me, for the experience of being in the Cardone studios. We did it in the studios in wherever that, not Miami, but right next to Miami. I think that was a great experience also because Jeanette, my, I think, fiance at the time, now wife, she was there with me. And it was just a great experience because Elena's message, at least in our episode, was a lot about family and supporting your family and how it really takes a team to get a lot of stuff done, especially if you want big, hairy, audacious goals and you want to be super successful. It's like you need to have a support person and an amazing supportive partner, or else it's all for nothing and you can't accomplish this all on your own. You can't possibly.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, Yona Weiss, and with me today we have Evan Holladay, all the way out from Nashville, Tennessee. What's going on, Evan?
Yes, Yona, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to dive into today's episode.
Oh, as am I. This has been long overdue and really excited to hear a little bit about your journey. You do something, little context for our listeners, something a little bit different in the multifamily space than the most. You may have heard, all these syndications and a lot of multifamily and value add, and you're doing a lot of development, but also very specifically in the affordable housing space. And when we talk about affordable housing, okay, we've talked about affordable housing in the context of mobile home parks, manufactured housing communities, and Section 8 housing, right? But what you're doing is something a little bit different, using a lot of tax credits and a lot of, governmental incentives to be able to build and provide affordable housing for communities. So that's a little context, who you are, CEO of Evan Holladay Ventures, got his own awesome podcast out there. Check him out wherever you listen to podcasts. What's the name of the podcast again? I'm like blanking right now.
The Monumental Podcast.
Monumental Podcast. I knew it was like something like that. So the Monumental Podcast. And what do you have to say for yourself today?
I love it. Give me just an open plate.
It's open mic.
Yeah, I love it. So really high level, I mean, what I am and who I am are really driven by, I have a passion for helping others. I have a passion for serving others and really impacting others. And that kind of drives a lot of my lifestyle, my business decisions. And as you mentioned and alluded to, really, a lot of our core business is within affordable workforce housing and doing it with quality and doing it with intention. Like you mentioned earlier, there are other avenues of affordable housing, but we really want to take that a step further and say, hey, how can we actually, first off, create a dent in the affordable housing crisis that is going on across the country with over 7 million families that need affordable housing right now. And by the way, that was pre-COVID that study was done. So I don't even know what that number is now. I imagine it's like 1.5 or 2 times that. But that's what drives us, is building quality and building something that working class families can actually afford. And it can be a win-win-win. I mean, our impact investors are able to make a great solid return and know that their capital is going towards a good cause and helping families in the community. Our residents are benefiting because they're only spending 30% of their paycheck, sometimes on a brand spanking new apartment that's, comparable to a Class A multifamily community. And they're not, breaking the bank. They can spend their other 70% of their monthly paycheck on healthcare and food and education and just taking care of their family. And then also the community wins because when you can provide stable, attainably priced housing, everybody in the community wins because we are all touched by people that are, entry level, making minimum wage, making $10, $12, even $15 an hour. Those are all people that can live in affordable housing. We're all benefiting from them being a part of our community and a part of our economy. So we all benefit when they actually have a stable place to call home in the community. And then lastly, it's, cities, we're all benefiting by economic development, having less inefficiency. Like I grew up studying economics, and it's like, one thing I hate is inefficiency. And inefficiency to me is when you have people that want to work but can't, and are working but can't afford a place to live and a place to call home. And that's just like, it seems crazy to me. Like, and that's what really drew me into this is in college, my group, myself and a few others formed a group, and we were just like, hey, let's try to take a stab at this affordable housing. And we started off with modular, and one thing led to another, and ended up working with one of the top developers in the country. And then eventually was like, hey, I think we can do this bigger and better. And that's when we started Holladay Ventures, and here we are today.
That's awesome. So how many projects have you tackled in terms of unit count, or even in the works now? Like what are we looking at?
Yeah. Let's see. Closed deals, closed about 8 deals, just over 1,400 units. And that's about 90% new construction. We do some acquisition as well. And then our pipeline currently is sitting at about 6 deals and another, I think it's like just over 1,300 units.
That's awesome.
So we're excited. We got tons of growth. If you know anybody that's looking to get into development, let us know, because we're quickly growing our team right now. We're looking for rock stars.
Okay, well, good to know. And a lot of the stuff you're doing is in and around Nashville, in where you're based.
Yeah, mostly in Middle Tennessee. We're doing some work in Huntsville as well, and Lexington and Louisville.
Okay, yeah. I mean, listen, when you can actually actively affect and benefit and better the communities that you live in, I mean, that's really what it's all about, right? And not necessarily that you're living in the same neighborhood of the places where you're building, but it gives a better feel to the city at large, right? Obviously, and the city's going to probably look at you differently when you're going into the city council, or you're going into those meetings where you're trying to get, I'm sure, a lot of development. You need to get permits. You need to get all kinds of benefits from them. They're going to look at you a little bit differently if you're local, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. That's why. So I've been working in Nashville for probably the last 8 years. And about 3.5 years ago, I moved to Nashville. We moved to Nashville because they're like, you know what? We need to be in our market, be part of the community, be able to run into people that could be partners or investors or even community leaders, at the coffee shop. And it honestly, the last 3.5 years have skyrocketed in business and opportunity, because you know what the community needs, and you can feel development's way different than acquisition, where you're in for a development process for at least 2+ years before you even see any dirt moving. And so that time it takes, it's just being a part of the community, knowing where the redevelopment is, where the corridors are, is important and key. And also just being able to network with landowners is also a big part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. How about with the actual people stamping those permits and stuff, right? Are you spending a lot of time in the municipality and those kind of meetings?
Yes. I'm not personally, but we have somebody on our team that basically is just like bird dogging, like he's there sitting at the permit office until we get that done, because those are usually long lead time items. And
for sure.
So we basically we hired a guy that used to work in the permit office, so he knows everybody. And that's been helpful, but it still takes forever.
No, but that's very smart to actually use someone kind of an insider, because you're right. It is. I mean, everything in government works slowly, and especially when it comes to permitting, for some reason, there's just, in my experience also, it's just the slowest process imaginable. Well, I want to ask you a little bit, because I am curious about how you're going about doing this. Like, obviously affordable housing is an incredible thing, but what are some of like kind of the unique ways that you are making your projects maybe different than other projects that are going up or going out there?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, and the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of affordable developers. There's a lot of groups doing really great work. And what I think honestly separates us and is a big part of our vision and our mission with Holladay Ventures is that we're figuring out, and we're still figuring this out now, but a big part of our mission is figuring out how we can take not only just quality, affordably done units and communities, but taking a holistic approach of how we're designing it, how we're developing it on the front end, how we're building it with quality. We're building it with the residents in mind. So we're building for sustainability. We're building for livability. We're building larger units. We're building energy efficient units. And then also taking that a step further of saying, how can we make this place a home where people are proud to call home, even down to like landscaping, for example. We're putting in mature trees in our communities so that we can actually provide shade for children that want to go out and play. That's one of the things that just bugs me is when I go to new developments and like you see these like 2-year-old trees that are like 4 feet tall, and you're like, that's going to take 30 years before that can provide any shade to anybody. And it's those are the type of things we try to be intentional about, saying, hey, if we're going to have children at our community, let's build a playground and let's build it big enough, and let's also put some mature trees around it.
That's very thoughtful.
Being intentional, and then taking it a step further, saying how can we provide resident services, resident empowerment is what we're calling it, and really something unique that I think, as far as I know, has not been done, is providing life coaching to our residents. That's still in the works, but we're really trying to implement that. Where we can, take it a step further and say, hey, let's not only change their environment, but let's change their mindset. Let's shift the way they see the world and help them, give them the tools they need to be able to get out of affordable housing.
Wow. That is quite unique. I mean, that's like taking it to the next level. Like you said, you're really empowering people in a way that wouldn't necessarily be thought of, like, okay, this is where I live, right? This is my apartment building. Yeah. Like, what does this have to do with, changing your mindset? Sure. Okay. There are like, you may be able to find in an apartment building, they'll have a gym, and in the gym, there might be like a Pilates or yoga class or something like that. But now you're talking about actually bringing in, speakers, or maybe bringing in coaching, and now you're creating much more of a community feel. I mean, I think the type of projects that you're building, if correct me if I'm wrong, but they're more than just apartment buildings. They're actually community settings, and so you're able to feel that someone wants to move in there, and when you're looking to find out who we can bring in to live here, you're looking at how can I add to that environment? How can I add to that feeling of community, not just a place to live?
That is the goal. That is our aspiration with all of this. And to that point, a couple examples. So we're about to break ground on one where we're partnering with a substance abuse recovery nonprofit who actually owns the land. They operate there currently. So we're going to double the square footage of their current capacity. We're going to build them a 71,000 square foot building, and in the process, build 195 mixed income affordable apartments. Mm-hmm. So basically, they'll help people from going through their substance abuse recovery program, and then once they graduate, then they can move into the affordable housing, and creates another step of help, so they don't immediately just go back out on the streets if they're homeless or indigent. It just gives them a better leg up to get out of the cycle. So that's one example, and then we're doing another one where we're actually creating live work units, and we're working with a technology school that's teaching particularly disadvantaged individuals, basically building them space. They're already operating online, so we're going to build them a physical space in the first floor, and then have residential units above it, and even have some live work units. So individuals in our community can learn how to basically get the skills they need to get hired by a tech company or tech-centered jobs, higher paying jobs, and also be able to, if they want to, create their own businesses and be able to operate and run those businesses right in their living room, and be able to sell goods or whatever it is right from where they live.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Yeah. This is literally like taking living to the next level. It's, how do people find out about this? How can people sign up? Right?
They need to listen to Weiss advice. That's what they need to do.
To listen to Monumental. I mean, you're probably plugging it over there also. But let me switch gears a little bit there. But on that note, Monumental, like where did that podcast come from? You've had some incredible people on the show. Continually have awesome people. A lot of entrepreneurs, obviously. A lot about, like you said, mindset. I mean, that's really what you're doing. But what's the meaning and the feeling behind Monumental?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, it was born out of I honestly, it was a selfish reason at first. I was like, you know what? There's this guy I want to talk to. He's a venture capitalist. He's from New York. And he was in town one weekend. And I was like, I need an excuse to keep talking to this guy. Mm-hmm. Like, what is my excuse? And it had always been an idea in the back of my head. And then eventually I was like, just kind of on the spot, I was like, hey, I have a podcast and I'd love to have you on. And to my surprise, he said yes. He's like, here's my cell phone and give me a call. And a month later, I just binged everything about podcasts and learned it all, and was nervous as hell, but got it done. And that was about 3 years ago. And really it's just kind of helped transform our business and our reach, and be able to not only help our business, but help those that are part of the Monumental community. Really, the theme behind Monumental and the idea behind it is really creating monumental impact. So a lot of what we're talking about right now is kind of what we talk about at Monumental, is figuring out how leaders and entrepreneurs are having their own impact, and how can our listeners have their own monumental, massive impact in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we all, just to your point about the podcast, and it's still underrated even today, but it has such that power. And I mean, obviously, you hit on one of the main points why I think a lot of people, myself included, have podcasts. It's just a great way to connect further with your guest, with someone who's on, who's on the other end of that Zoom, or if you're doing it in person, to just have further conversation. Here's a way that I can connect with you in a way you wouldn't necessarily, someone's like, oh, you want to go out for coffee and just kind of shoot the breeze? No, but, oh, you want me on my podcast? Sure. It's like the same exact thing. Exactly. You just put a microphone in front of someone and they're like,
exactly. It's amazing.
Oh,
I have a good example of that. So Cameron Herold, author of Vivid Vision, phenomenal author, phenomenal business leader and coach. So I had him on the podcast, and then afterward, I was asking if he could speak to one of our mastermind events. And so keep in mind, I spoke to him for an hour long, and it was a phenomenal conversation. I learned a lot from it, an amazing episode. But I asked him to speak to our mastermind. He's like, okay, that'll be $5,000.
Right.
I'm like, wow, I just got an hour of your time for free, pretty much. And it didn't cost me a dime. And that's exactly it. It's like, you typically have to pay for some of these top level people's time, and pay a lot for it, but yet you get it for free on a podcast.
Yeah. I've actually had a couple of people say that there's only once I think that only allowed you to come on their podcast if you paid for it.
Oh, yeah.
Have you come across that before?
Yeah. We connected with a group and we were asking to be on the podcast, and they said that, and I was like, I think I'm good.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I pay $2,500 to be a guest on our show. And I'm like, I'll wait till you invite me.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, oh, we can be a guest on your show too. Okay. Well, then it'll be $2,500 for you as well.
Yeah.
Let's make it an even wash.
Yeah, exactly.
Have there been any like guests that have just been, you've been blown away by the episode, or something that you like didn't expect, or really changed the way you viewed something?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they're all pretty mind-blowing, but I think one of my favorites was probably Elena Cardone. I think partially just for me, for the experience of being in the Cardone studios. We did it in the studios in wherever that, not Miami, but right next to Miami. I think that was a great experience also because Jeanette, my, I think, fiance at the time, now wife, she was there with me. And it was just a great experience because Elena's message, at least in our episode, was a lot about family and supporting your family, and how it really takes a team to get a lot of stuff done, especially if you want big, hairy, audacious goals and you want to be super successful. It's like you need to have a support person and an amazing supportive partner, or else it's all for nothing, and you can't accomplish this all on your own. You can't possibly. Yeah. And so that was just really great experience for me and my now wife, Jeanette, to be able to, for both of us to hear that at the same time. And it kind of changed our perspective of like, hey, this is a good thing that we're working together, and, we're helping each other, and we're helping each other grow. And she's really been tremendous in supporting our vision and what we do at Holladay Ventures.
Awesome. And you mentioned briefly, earlier that you are growing, right? You have a team. You're looking for rock star people to come on your team, and you've built a team, right? You've kind of started from scratch and built a real company, a business that is thriving and doing well, continually buying more, developing more, right? Bringing projects to life and keeping that cycle going. What's your vision? I mean, you mentioned you have that vision, but what is that vision? That's 5, 10, 20 years out.
Yeah, so it's twofold. And I actually learned this from Cameron Herold in that episode. I had always used to say that my BHAG, my big, hairy, audacious goal, was creating or preserving 100,000 units of affordable housing. But I realized after talking to Cameron, that's my goal. That's my big goal. But that's not my big, hairy, audacious goal. that is making a dent in affordable housing. I think, the system as we know it today of development and of real estate and of housing, I think it's a broken system that needs to be fixed basically at the end of the day, it's just a supply and demand issue.
Right.
We're clearly not building enough units to meet the demand of people. And that's why we have skyrocketing home prices. That's why we have skyrocketing rent prices. And the only way to combat that is to be able to build more or create more units. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. But I think that is a big part of my mission and a big part of my why. And my big, hairy, audacious goal is to make a dent. So we've talked about we're even looking at modular now. We're looking at 3D printing. Just really we're not implementing that yet, but really trying to figure out what are the innovative ways that we can bring vastly more units to market than ever, conceivably possible. And one way that we're looking at now is Amazon is doing their $2 billion housing equity fund, specifically for affordable housing. And so we've been talking with Amazon saying, hey, how can we scale what you guys are doing and the money you're providing and be able to create, thousands of units at a time instead of, 100 to 200 units at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what gets me excited. That's what gets me pumped up. Because I know that a stable, affordable housing is the backbone to a healthy lifestyle, a healthy community. There's just so many benefits because once you have that, then you really can focus on coaching. You can get something out of coaching. But imagine if, you're living in an unstable home, you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're moving every month. I mean, how can you possibly be in the right headspace to accept and fully implement coaching and all that it's good for?
Absolutely.
So I think that's what gets me excited and gets me pumped up.
That's huge. That's awesome. And you're so right. It's impossible. It really is almost impossible. I mean, it would be superhuman to expect anyone to be able to function properly when you're living those type of circumstances, and to be able to help combat that in whatever way you can. What's most unfortunate is that like you said, the supply and demand, that we're just not able to bring enough housing to the public that is needed. And I think a lot of that has to do with, government and, kind of holding back permitting and holding back land from doing these kind of things. They have their own political reasons, I'm sure, but I don't want to get into that too much. But I think just to touch on your point there, that is a big, hairy, audacious goal. That's something that you can make a dent in the whole system, right? I mean, that's huge. That's pretty cool. I do want to transition now to what we call the final four. Uh-oh. Did we lose you?
Hey.
Okay. We're going to transition.
Sorry about that. Not sure what happened.
Yeah. But anyways, it's a perfect time to transition to the final four. And these are 4 questions that I ask all of my guests. And the first question to you, Evan, is going to be, what is the worst job that you ever had?
You told me this ahead of time and I did not think of something. But honestly, I would say the best and worst job for me was working for the very first developer I worked for. Was not the best experience from a company or culture perspective, and how they treated their employees and how they ran their culture. But I think that's what really, and this was back in college, but that's honestly what I learned a lot from that. And my parents even said, they're like, you're going to learn what not to do when you start your company. And I think that was probably my worst job, but also some of my best lessons were from that job.
And that's often the case, right? It's about when your mindset and your perspective on life is, what can I learn from this situation? You're going to take a lot from it. And I say a lot of times on the show also, you got to learn from everyone. And sometimes you just got to learn what not to do, right? How not to act, how not to be. And those are some of the most powerful lessons. So second question is going to be, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
This is an easy one. This is I Can See Clearly Now by Dr. Wayne Dyer. It's a phenomenal book. I was also coincidentally reading this book at a time when my mom was going through cancer chemo treatments. And I told her about how much this book meant to me. And she's like, he's one of my favorite authors. And I had no idea. But it's an amazing book, not highly recommended or not highly talked about, but it's like a hidden gem.
Yeah, and that's a book that I've come across quite a bit. And his other works in general. I mean, I'm not sure where, but it's kind of come up many times. So I'm gonna definitely add that to the playlist over there, or the book list, whatever you want to call it. It's just ever growing book list over here. But I can see clearly now by Dr. Wayne Dyer. Awesome. Thank you so much for that one. What was it about that was like paradigm shift?
I think that it's just trusting your gut more, and also knowing that sometimes when you see signs in the world or in your life, you should trust those signs and go with them. And that aligns with trusting your gut too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, that's really important, I think, for anyone in any situation.
Yeah.
Third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
Spanish, definitely. We were just in Costa Rica last week for a mastermind. Tyler Chesser.
Sure.
And I put that on. It was an amazing mastermind. And I got to test my Spanish a little bit, but I love it so much, but I want to get better at it.
Okay. So deep dive into Spanish.
Yes.
You just got to immerse yourself. I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we were saying. We're like, maybe we should just come down here for a month.
That will definitely help.
Yeah.
Or two, right?
I won't complain about it.
Right, exactly. I mean, the great thing about what we do, and most people do nowadays, is a lot of what you can do is remotely, especially if you have a team and you have a trusted team that's doing a lot of the great work. Take some time to go learn Spanish in Costa Rica. Well, there you go. Well, I'm gonna next time we speak, we'll challenge you on that one. I know a little Spanish.
We'll do the whole podcast in Spanish. How about that?
That'll be a big challenge. That'll be difficult. Yeah. I can understand Spanish pretty well, believe it or not. But every time I try to speak Spanish, like either Hebrew or Yiddish comes out, which are two other languages I speak fluently, and like for whatever reason, like I can't.
And they're like, "What?"
I can't like compartmentalize them in my brain.
That's funny.
So, fourth and final question for you is: what does success mean to you?
I think it means fulfillment at every level of my life. Relationships, happiness, health, wealth, contribution, and living a life on purpose.
That's what it's all about. That's awesome. Broken down very clearly, very succinctly. It's almost as if you asked that question before. Someone's asked that you before.
Yeah. It's funny. We asked the same question on Monumental, and sometimes people can go on and on and on. And so I like to try to keep it succinct.
That's awesome. Very good. Well, last and finally, Evan, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you?
Yeah. So if you're interested in partnering with us or investing with us, being part of our Impact Investor Club, that's holidayventures.com. And then if you're interested in Monumental and everything we're doing, we also do coaching around affordable housing development. That's evanholladay.com.
Awesome. And we'll put all that in the show notes. And Holladay is with an A and not an I.
Two L's.
Two L's. So we'll make sure to spell that out. We'll make sure to spell all that out in the show notes and on the episode. If you're watching this anywhere or listening to this anywhere, you'll see how the name is spelled, because that's his name, Holladay Ventures. Awesome. Evan, it's been a true pleasure speaking with you, even though seemingly very briefly. This always flies by. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us. And I wish you much continued success.
Yes. Thank you, Yona.
Awesome. And to our listeners, remember, until next time, the best advice comes only when you ask.
Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.